What's up, everybody? It's Chad. I'm back again for season 3, episode 1. So thank you all for joining me today. I have a special guest with me, Brian Vincente. Thank you so much for joining me today, Brian.
My pleasure. Great to be here.
Oh, it's great. And, I'm so glad that, I was able to get you on in the first episode, like I was saying before the show. But before we jump into the episode, I want to hope everybody had a great holiday season. Everything went great, and you're having a wonderful 2025. Thank you again for, liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. Without y'all, we wouldn't have a season 3. So let's jump in it, and we're going to get into the new season. All right. So Brian, thank you so much for joining me. But for the people who don't know who you are, unfortunately, or, sad for them, could you give us an intro of who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I'm an attorney. I've been active in the cannabis space for 22 years. And, I played a big role in legalizing cannabis in Colorado, which was, the first place in the world to move forward with legalization. And I've been involved in passing legal, cannabis laws and psychedelic laws for a couple decades. So actively counsel a lot of clients and governments on this interesting and important policy.
Yeah, 100%. Because there's really no set way to do it yet. And we're all still kind of figuring it out, So it's great that they have someone they can reach out to who has the experience, What really got you into like cannabis and the psychedelic space in general with this, and fighting for it?
Yeah, so I have always found, the war on drugs to be, a topic of great interest, and just the more it's one of those things, the more you look at it, the more you think, well, this is a failure in terms of, it's costly, it doesn't accomplish its goals, it criminalizes a bunch of good people. And so when I was in law school, I started to think, is there a way I could work in this space, and there wasn't, this is a couple decades ago, so there weren't like cannabis businesses to represent, and legalization wasn't around and so forth. But, and I was actually told it was career suicide by my law school guidance counselors, but went ahead and kind of started working in the space, and then, really got to know a lot of medical marijuana patients and other individuals that, cannabis had just been such an important part of their life. And, I've been fortunate to be able to help a lot of those folks over the years.
Nice, and it's great that, we have people like you that are willing to do that fight. I've been fighting here in New Mexico for the cannabis stuff, especially the medical side for, over a decade too, not as long as yourself, of course, but, I understand the struggle and the fights, and, I'm just happy that we have people like you that are willing to step in and say, well, let's fix this. This is a little ridiculous. So, it's great that more people are coming to the light, and they're seeing that, what we did was a little silly. It didn't really make any sense. And, I've been seeing this meme a lot. Congratulations to drugs for winning the war on drugs. Because that's what happened.
The only true winner there.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Only the true winner. Yeah, and it's the reigning champion. So, but it doesn't stop there either. So you had a brief stint as in a governor appointed position, correct?
Yeah, so I was on the transition team for the Colorado governor, Jared Polis. He was a U.S. congressman, and he's currently our governor up here. And he has been pro-cannabis, since day one. He actually flew a hemp flag over the U.S. Capitol when he was a congressman. And so we got really involved in trying to get him elected in Colorado. And as such, he put me on his sort of economic advisement team. And I, honestly, I had to butt some heads with some people on that team because they were very against the state advertising cannabis tourism and highlighting our cannabis businesses. But of course, they were very happy to highlight Coors and, New Belgium and these breweries. And so to me, that hypocrisy shouldn't stand. And in fact, I'm glad I won some of those arguments. Now the state does devote some of its budget to, highlighting cannabis economy, which is an important and growing area.
100%. And my father's actually from Southern Colorado. So, I spent my whole life between both areas. So, once cannabis became legal and I came back from my government contracting gig in Germany, I was able to go over there and check it out. And, it was really cool. So, I got to really see your work. And, we see it today too. So, we can't thank you enough. And, of course, there doesn't stop there. Of course, what are some things that maybe you've been up to since then?
Yeah. So a lot of it was, So I helped write and run the legalization law in Colorado, and then we really wanted to export that model, right? We believed that, we could have tax-paying businesses and employ people and and stop arresting folks for cannabis. That was the right path. And, I've been involved in my law firm, Vincente LLP, has been involved in, advising governments to help change their laws, whether that's Massachusetts or Uruguay or Canada. We've kind of been all over trying to push that model. And, fortunately, if you think about it, right, it's, 2012, there were 0 states, and suddenly there were 2 with Colorado and Washington. And now we have 24 states, including New Mexico, that use cannabis. So it's a big change in our lifetime, and of course, prior to 2012, cannabis has been functionally illegal for 100 years. So it's great to be kind of on that side of it. So we continue to push to change more state laws, to refine the state laws that are in existence around cannabis, and then try to get, federal changes as well.
Yeah, 100%, because, the federal one is actually one of the most important ones. But, it was a good push to start on the states. That's where the real push starts. The states, one by one, falls. I was watching it the whole time. And then, I became an advocate around 2013 here in New Mexico. And that's when I really got my feet wet and kind of figured out this whole process. It really isn't that easy. And New Mexico has a unique way of doing it. We don't have voter ballot initiatives here. It's through the legislature is the way we had to do it. We're one of the only few states that did. And that's actually a key difference between Colorado and New Mexico. If you guys didn't know, they have that, we don't. And that's the way you guys passed it, correct?
Yeah, so we literally gathered signatures from a couple 100,000 voters and then forced it onto the ballot. So Colorado is one of, I think it's 25 states or so that have that sort of statewide direct democracy.
Yeah.
And sadly, New Mexico doesn't, but you guys were able to work through the legislature to get it done there.
Yeah, and you know what, we found through the legislature, we weren't stuck with what we had. If there was something that was a mistake, we were able to fix it through the legislature. Now, of course, nothing's perfect. There's still things that we need to fix today. But I feel that, we got something better than what we would have from years prior, because years prior, there was some really bad bills. There was one with state stores where they wanted to have state sanctioned stores, but they were going to have a 25-mile radius kind of thing. And I'm like, New Mexico's not very big. That kind of exempts a lot. I mean, kicks a lot of people out.
give me the Albuquerque store, right? And
yeah, right.
Mile radius around that baby.
Right in the center of the city, you would have been fine. Yeah, but we didn't go that route. Luckily, because it wouldn't have worked in New Mexico. It would have been just as limited as our medical program was, because that was a whole mess and a whole conversation. But yeah, back in the whole thing. Yeah, if you guys didn't know, New Mexico, we don't have that. We have the voter ballot questions, but that's triggered through our legislature. They actually are the ones who trigger that. We don't go through the signatures. However, we do have a veto referendum. So we're able to essentially do the same process that you guys did to legalize cannabis, except for us, we can reverse the law. So that's a key difference here in New Mexico, that the only power that we do have as the people like that is we can say this law, we don't like it, we can petition to get it on the ballot, and then it'll be a yes or no. The governor can't even do anything about it. So that's one of the key things. And I don't think a lot of New Mexicans know about that. So that's something great to have in our pocket. We don't have one way, but we have another,
Yeah, fascinating. Every state does it a little bit different, which is kind of what keeps us all on our toes,
Oh, 100%. That's one thing I've been learning too, is how vastly different every state runs. I lived in Hawaii for a long time. And so I'm kind of paying attention more to that legislature this year. It's different. The times are different. The way they run it is different. The politicians are different.
I think that's the state that will legalize this year. We're doing a little bit of lobbying out there, and Willie Nelson's involved in the coalition because he lives out there half the time. And the Marijuana Policy Project, a nonprofit that I'm involved in, I gave it about an 80% chance of legalizing it. And we could use a win, so it'd be nice to get Hawaii on board.
Yeah, 100%. I was out there last summer, just visiting, seeing some friends and everything, and I got my Hawaii cannabis out-of-state card or whatever, and I was able to check out their market, and I connected with some advocates and some people in the industry there, and I was kind of figuring out what's going on. I'm like, well, who's really pushing for this, guys? Do you need help or something? But I'm glad that you guys are doing this, because I'm like, oh, who's really doing the advocacy in the state? Because they've had a program since 2000, and it hasn't really changed, or improved really with the changing landscape.
Yeah, a good call. They were an early medical adopter. But they haven't been able to legalize. It's been a couple decades, but I really think this is the year the governor's on board and a lot of key elected officials are in place. So, fingers crossed, we'll get it done.
Yeah, and speaking of, on your front too, because I know this happened here in New Mexico, what were the fears going into like the legalization when you guys were like pushing for it and actually getting it on the ballot? And, what were like the fears of like, federal intervention or anything else like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to think about now, but because you can't drive a mile in Denver without seeing a dispensary. But the world was very different, right, back in the
Yeah.
day in terms of cannabis. And I worked for 8 years to get Colorado's legalization law done with a couple allies, man, and we just pounded the pavement, running local ballot initiatives, city ballot initiatives to legalize cannabis, decriminalize cannabis. Did a lot of kind of pro bono impact legal cases that would get in the news representing medical patients and so forth, to trying to show the voters that there's really a valuable side to regulating cannabis versus keeping it illegal. And during that time, man, I mean, I debated anyone from the attorney general to chiefs of police and angry moms, man. And, you kind of heard it all, but, the key, people were afraid that, kids' use would go up. People were afraid the roads would become unsafe. People were afraid the feds would come in and arrest all the medical patients. There was there's a lot of fear out there, man. And we were able to, push through that, kind of make a case to the voters like, hey, let's tax this product, regulate it like alcohol. And then fortunately, as we've seen, Chad, it's amazing. Like a lot of those fears, which we didn't exactly know what would happen when we legalized cannabis. We thought it would go well, but it's like, we have teen use down. We don't have any spike in sort of, road crashes related to cannabis. And, and a lot of other states have adopted this model, including New Mexico. And we also have, a lot of tax revenue and jobs coming in from it. So it's been a pretty big W, but, there was certainly a lot of fear in the air back in the day.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because, even here in New Mexico, we've had medical since 2007. And I got like a little history thing when I was on SM105 here in New Mexico when we were medical, we were trying to change it. I was working on the consumption language stuff. And somebody that was a part of it was giving us history. And there was actually at the Department of Health, they would go through drills in case the DEA showed up to take patients' information. They were doing drills on how to destroy it, how to ensure that patients' information was staying safe. Now, I give it to the Department of Health for going that far, because not many states would have done that, to protect the patients and their information and everything. But, the fear was real. And the real reason why our program was so strict, and it was one of the most strictest in the nation at the time, was because of that, because of the federal intervention fear. And it was real at the time, that it wasn't like, people weren't getting raided, and it wasn't like an issue. It was a real issue. So yeah, those fears were warranted for sure, 100%. But I'm glad you guys just said, screw it, we're going to keep pushing. Regardless, if it passes, it passes. And to maybe make the people in Hawaii feel a little bit better, what was your percentage of passing going into the Colorado vote? Maybe they can feel a little bit better on theirs.
Yeah, so we won by a 10% margin, right, which is 55 to 45. And that's been, a lot of the subsequent states that have passed these laws have won by about a 10% margin. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because if you look back to like the 60s, back in the hippie days, it was only about 10-15% of Americans support legalization, but we've just seen it spike, particularly in the last 20 years or so, and now it's close to 75% of Americans, both Democrats and Republicans, support legalization, and like 90% support medical. So I think folks in Hawaii or wherever, it's like the constituents support this, and it's a matter of getting elected officials to do the right thing.
Yeah, 100%. And at the time when you guys legalized it in Colorado, nationally it was like 48%. So still under 50% of favor for legalization. So it's still a bold move. And much one that we needed. And by then, it just helped with killing the stigma. It helped with killing so much stigma. And then you have the Charlotte's Web. You have the little figgy girl. She comes on, and everyone's life just changes because of this story. And then you have that comes out of that whole thing too. And, it was just a lot of things kind of fell in the right place at the right time. And we are where we are now. And we have states on the East Coast, the West Coast, Missouri, that's a big one too over there. That one came out of nowhere for me. They legalized it and they're doing great. They're having a good time. I have a buddy over there, Waxy Brown. He does essentially like what I do, but, over there, and, they're doing great and they're having a good time with it,
Yeah, it's become a real, it's not a, conservative or a liberal issue. It's kind of everybody's on board. You have anywhere from Arizona to, Maine. It's like everybody's sort of feeling it these days, which is great.
Yeah, but unfortunately, Texas. So I didn't have this in the guide or anything, but what are your hopes for Texas this year?
Yeah, what a crazy world. I mean, I would say the largest state economy for cannabis is actually Texas right now because of intoxicating hemp,
Yes.
right? And this is a state that has a pretty limited medical program, very limited, and no legalization. But what they have is a ton of unregulated intoxicating hemp products. I mean, you guys know this, Chad.
Yeah.
But we recently saw the Lieutenant Governor Paxton, who has a ton of power, just last week say, hey, it's one of my top 3 priorities for the year is to shut down intoxicating hemp. So I don't know, man. We'll see what happens. I mean, our goal, we have an office in Texas, and we would like to see Texas legalized because we'd like to see everywhere legalized. Yeah. I don't think it's realistic this year. I don't think it's probably realistic for 5 or 8 years. So that honestly kind of benefits New Mexico from a tourist traffic standpoint. But, eventually we got to get to a place where Texans aren't being arrested and people have access to tested products. But I don't think it's going to happen this year.
Yeah. And for the sake of, fellow Americans, I would hope that it happened this year. But I'm the same with you. We're probably 5 to 8 years out when it comes to Texas, which is great for New Mexicans. Don't get me wrong. The Southern Park dispensary owners are licking their chomps right now. Those guys in Carlsbad and Hobbs. Shout out to them, of course. The friends down in Jaw, they're really killing it over there, man. Jaw, New Mexico, down in the corner, they're just slaughtering the competition, and it's doing great for the Texans too, because now they have access. The access that they should have had a long time ago.
Yeah, to a tested, regulated product, right? And it's taxed, it's producing jobs in New Mexico and revenue, and it's just the way that the system should be. Yeah,
for sure, 100%. Because we're seeing how lucrative that industry could be with this, intoxicating hemp thing that is going on there with the THCA and all that, and even other states too, like Minnesota and Illinois. They're really embracing those drinks. And I'm telling people, about 10 years, 15 years down the road, drinks are probably going to be, close to the number 1 consumption method for cannabis for the common user, just for the fact of it's easy. By then the technology will be a lot better, because now we're seeing the nano-emulsification, drinks becoming more popular. We'll see more technology, on the rise with it. And who knows, maybe the alcohol lobbyists will kind of back off a little bit and kind of start going a different direction, because that announcement the other day was at the Surgeon General saying that alcohol causes cancer. That's a kind of a win for cannabis.
Yeah. I think that's really smart what you're saying, Chad. I think there's a very good chance that in 10 years the majority of the way people consume cannabis will be through beverages. It's just historically how our country consumes intoxicants. It's coffee, tea, Red Bull, beer, wine, it's all beverages, right? And then you have more and more venues opening up, whether that's consumption use clubs in New Mexico, or bars in Minnesota, or stadiums in Florida that are opening up to intoxicating hemp beverages, which are essentially cannabis beverages. So I really think that is the path. And I'll tell you, man, we work with some big companies, small companies, everyone, but you have Total Wine and other folks that Anheuser-Busch that are carrying these products. They're not going to want to see that revenue stream go away. So I think we probably see an expansion in beverages, and it'll just be fascinating to watch.
No, 100%. Even here in New Mexico, we're starting to see more and more of the drink thing, and the mocktail thing is kind of helping too, and people really wanting to try non-alcoholic beverages, but instead of going to alcohol, they're going to cannabis too, or not at all, which is fine. But we're seeing that shift away from alcohol and more towards cannabis. For the first time in history, we have more people using cannabis, or adults in America using cannabis, than alcohol. And that's great news, that in my opinion, and I don't know about you, but that's great news.
I totally agree, man. And we're here in dry January, so we got to lean into this, but it's the California sober thing. I think it's really taken off, and people are realizing that they can have a good buzz but not wake up with a hangover, and not consume an addictive product in alcohol. So it really, has been a wonderful effect of legalization to watch, as more people substitute cannabis instead of using alcohol, which is certainly a more damaging substance for them and society, right? You have people get drunk and get in fights. Like, no, it's very rare for people to get stoned and get in a fight or beat their wife. It just doesn't really, occur, right? It's heading towards a safer society.
Yeah, 100%. Like every time I'm at a consumption lounge, people who are minding their own business, having a good time, or joking with each other. This poor girl, her last name happened to be Santana at the last one I went to. And I looked at her and I said, do you get Carlos Santana jokes a lot? And like, she thought I was going to give her one, but I was just legitimately asking. She said, oh my God, yes, all of the time. They ask me if he's my uncle or this and that. And I just started laughing. I was like, I'm not going to ask. I was just wondering if that happens. And I was like,
yeah. That guy's a legend, man. He could shred the guitar.
Yeah, 100%. I would have owned it. Totally my uncle.
Yeah, it's my great uncle. It's my great uncle.
Let me have it free. So, but yeah, and I've seen you, through different interviews and stuff, and your other work too. We actually met last year here in Cruces at the cannabis convention. It was great. And one of the things that you've kind of worked and championed recently is the psilocybin thing in Colorado. Care to speak on that a little bit? I mean, that's something new and huge, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really an exciting new area, right, of drug reform as well as just medical access, right? Yeah. And I'm thrilled that Colorado and my law firm has been able to kind of, lead the way a bit on this. And, it dates back to, we started similar to cannabis. We have like a playbook, like you got to pass local laws, and then eventually you soften up the public enough where you can pass state laws. And that's what we did. We passed some laws in the early, 2020s, whatever that is. And then local laws around legalizing psilocybin in Denver. And then we ran a ballot measure statewide in 2022 to legalize, essentially natural healing substances, 5 of them, including psilocybin mushrooms or magic mushrooms. It's also peyote and ibogaine and DMT and some things like that. And it won. Right. Yeah. So we're thrilled about that. And then we've been involved in the drafting of regulations since then. And it's kind of broken into 2 parts. I mean, adults 21 and over can currently grow and possess these substances, largely psilocybin mushrooms, but other stuff as well in their homes. And then as of just January 1, so very recently, the state has started licensing healing centers where adults can go and purchase psilocybin, use the product on site with a licensed facilitator, which could be a medical professional. It could also be a spiritual healer or a life coach type thing, and kind of have the benefit of that. And I'll tell you, Chad, in the process of working on this, I got to know some people that, they had treatment-resistant depression, they had just incurable alcoholism, and psilocybin really opened these doors in their mind that allowed them to move past that and basically save their lives. So, the fact that we're going to be able to have those services, available here in our state is wonderful. And, I was actually just talking to our practice head for psychedelics this morning, and he thinks New Mexico and California could be the next states to turn this way as well. So, could kind of mushroom out, if you will, from here.
Yeah, well, I'll give you some good news. I've been working with a group to do this exact thing here in New Mexico for about the past year and a half or so. Last year, I was working with them, and we got the SM, is it 1? I forget the name of it, SM12, I think, or 11. And it's a study bill between the Department of Health and UNM, and it passed unanimously in the Senate. So even one of the most conservative senators who was fighting cannabis tooth and nail just before this was all for it. And it's because he saw his friends at the VA. I'm a veteran myself too, so I understand this. Saw his friends at the VA get benefits from psilocybin, just even using one single dose, of a macro dose. And so he was really motivated by this. And so he worked with one of the most liberal senators in the state on this matter. They worked together, and in the end, there was about 4 different sponsors of this from both sides of the party spectrum. And it was really great to see that because no one voted against it. And so now we're here a year later. And that was a Hail Mary. We got that done within like 3 weeks. I was up there trying to pull senators off the floor to try to get it sponsored and everything. And luckily, they found one to do it in the end. But this year, we're going to go with that same senator sponsor. And we're going to maybe see a psilocybin bill most likely going through the legislature. I think we're going to kind of go the route that you guys are going for the medical side, not yet the adult side. So I think that was one of the things that I picked up while we actually did a town hall in Santa Fe with this, and I do the cannabis town halls around New Mexico too, and so I helped them with this. And one of the key things that we got from the data is that when we legalized cannabis even medically, we kind of just said good luck, have fun, figure it out. But with psilocybin, it's a little bit different. It doesn't affect you like cannabis does. It makes you see Jesus and Muhammad at the same time. And so
a little more powerful, yeah.
Yeah, a little more powerful. So we're kind of taking more of okay, let's go a little slower with this. I think one of the ideas might be to have the on-site thing kind of thing going on, but we'll see what happens. I like that idea too, to have like an on-site kind of thing, and I think that's been the consensus too with a lot of people. Is I want to be able to have someone essentially trip set me. I want to, especially for someone who's never done it before. Like for the people who are experienced, we get it. But most people that are going to be joining this program are people who've never done it before, people who are really desperate in need and are seeking help in some sort. So I hopefully that is kept in the bill, that kind of motivation of it and all. But we'll see. And time will tell. Right now it's pre-file and there's nothing in yet. And we're probably still working on the bill.
Yeah, well, thank you for your advocacy, man. It's so important, and I've been following some of the work you and the crew have been doing down there, so it's amazing. And I mean, the one kind of interesting path here that no law has kind of unlocked, right? So really, it's only Colorado and Oregon that have functioning psilocybin laws, is microdosing, right? I talked to a lot of people that really find benefit from just consuming small amounts of psilocybin and chocolates or whatever daily. That gets them off depression medicine, or it helps with their wellness generally. It's often non-intoxicating, like you don't feel it, but it's in your system. But that's not legal to purchase under Colorado's law or in Oregon's. So it's like that just could be something to try to figure out, and we all need to figure it out because there's legitimacy there. But the way we draft the law is like you got to pass something that'll pass. Like you can't shoot for the moon right out of the gate. But that's just an interesting angle as well.
Yeah, it is, and who knows? It might change, and we might go another route because I'm the same way. I'm a big proponent for home grows. I've been growing cannabis myself for years, and I feel that if you have the means to grow psilocybin at home, why not? And if you can supply yourself or whatever the means may be, most people that do want to grow it at home are a little more experienced with it versus ones who are the other way. So if that's the case, I'd most likely throw my hand in the my hat in the ring and try it myself. But until that time comes. But I have tried microdose as well, and it's helped me myself too. They don't call it golden teacher for no reason. These things do teach you some stuff, and it's not like it showed me a path. It just made me realize that okay, and it kind of clears the cloud, the murkiness that kind of fills your mind sometimes. It's just hard to get away, but sometimes it clears it out, and that's really helped me myself.
Yeah, and you mentioned the home grow. I mean, that's as we're looking at drafting these laws, and it's just so important in my view for whether it's psilocybin or cannabis, just because our health system is so broken, right? And medicine's so expensive, and insurance ain't paying for anything. We got the United Healthcare guy getting shot, down. I mean, it's like just a crazy world around healthcare these days. But the fact that, laws are being drafted where people can grow their own medicine and they don't have to participate in that side of the broken healthcare system and the capitalist nature of it is truly remarkable. So it's a way for us to kind of, chart a different path.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have a pinon tree in my front yard, and the sap of the pinon tree is being used for like cuts and burns and stuff for a very long time in the area. So it would suck if I had to cut that tree down just for the fact that I'm not allowed to make my own medicine kind of thing, or own remedies if I need to, whatever. If it helps, like or yerba buena, and people grow that for stomach issues. I grew up drinking that my whole life, and I still do to this day. It just tastes good. But yeah, it just tastes good. But it goes into that line, that you should just be allowed to do that, and I like to say that without home grows or being able to grow at home, it's not legalization. It's just prohibition with perks. That's all that is.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a little veil trick over your eyes, like, haha, you have legalization. It's like, well, not really. I can't grow at home. Yeah,
no, I agree, man. And it's interesting, when we wrote Colorado's law, 12 years ago or whatever, people said, if you include home grow, you're not going to win. And basically we as the proponent said, well, we don't include home grow. That's not true legalization. So we're going to put it in. And honestly, it didn't poll very well, but we threw it in there and we won. And, I think that's been a lesson, right? Like you see Florida, they failed to legalize in this past November. They didn't have home grow. And a lot of advocates said, hey man, we don't want to be forced to go to these dispensaries necessarily. We want to have that option, but we want to also have the option to grow at home the same way I could brew beer at home.
Yeah.
And so, So I don't know. I think there's something to it.
No, 100%. Because even after my dad came back from Saudi Arabia during the Gulf War, he had I cannot confirm nor deny if he was making wine over there, but he came back and he knew how to make wine. And we had 2 fig trees in the backyard, so he decided to make fig wine one year, and I helped him. Of course, I didn't drink any of the wine, but I helped him squish it and the whole process and everything. So, that's something that we wouldn't have been able to do if it was banned to do that at home. But he's allowed to make his own wine at home, of course, if you're not selling it. But he shared it with the family and all that, and it was close to Christmas time, so it was just a little gift thing that he was able to give people. Like, here, try this wine, and it's something that we're seeing in the cannabis side now too. I don't know how much weed I got this last Christmas, but thank you, everybody that was giving me weed.
Yeah, I mean, the gifting aspect is great, right?
Yeah, it is. It's 100% great, and I love it. But thank you so much for this conversation. I look forward to talking more on this, side of things and getting more of, what you've done and all that. And of course, next season, I'd love to get an update because, who knows what's going to happen between now and then. But if you have anything else you want to talk about on this segment, bring it up now because we're about to hop over to the next one.
Man, I just want to say it's such a pleasure to connect with you, and I really appreciate the work going on in New Mexico. We're all part of the same movement, pushing in the right direction, and let's definitely keep in touch.
Yeah, 100%, man. Thank you so much. And I hope some of you watching, got something from this, and learn some history and see the people who are behind these pushes and stuff like that. Because you don't always get to see the faces to the people that really push for like the legalization and, freeing these plants and, our choices really. So, it's great that, you're one of those people that love to show your face, because not many people do.
You gotta stand up for what you believe in, man.
Stand up for your rights. So we're going to move on to the next conversation. The second segment we're going to talk about the New Mexico legislation. I know first episode I'm just hitting y'all hard, and it's because next week on the 21st is going to be the very first day of the New Mexico legislation. It's going to be a 60-day session, and that's actually going to be the last legislative session for 60 days for Michelle Lujan Grisham, our current governor. After that, it'll be a 30-day session, and then we're going to have the gubernatorial election. So we have no clue what governor we're going to get next. So this is kind of like one of our last pushes with the governor that we had, who is very openly cannabis friendly. The governor that we had before her was the total opposite, hated cannabis, actually ran on ending the medical cannabis program here in New Mexico just like 2 years after it had been passed, and won, but she wasn't able to do that. But what she did is kept the program stagnant for 8 years. So we have no clue who we're going to get next. The way that New Mexico kind of goes in a pattern is we tend to go Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, a little pattern like that. But we'll see if we continue that same pattern. We were usually pretty accurate on who's going to win the presidential election, but we've been wrong the past couple, 2020 and 2024. 2016 and 2024 we were wrong. So we'll see if this happens with the governor stuff too. We keep on with the track on that. The reason why I'm bringing up the legislation session, because you guys know I keep all of you updated as much as I can. I'm posting on there constantly. It's my football season. I'm throwing popcorn at the TV. I'm running between rooms that have different screens because I have different committee hearings up on the webcast, which I am so glad that we have that. I don't know if Colorado has that, but we can watch all the committee hearings and the floor hearings and stuff like that. It's such a big help, especially for the constituents, like just regular citizens. We should be able to do that, because I'm 4 hours away from my state capital, that's kind of far. Even where my dad's from, he's from Florence, Colorado. And so that was like 3 hours away from Denver. So, it's quite a ways too. So, that's the same kind of similar thing in Colorado. So, you guys kind of get it too. But this next legislative session is going to be huge for cannabis. There's a lot of changes that are going to be on the chopping block, essentially. Most bills in the legislative or the legislature don't pass, guys. They usually either don't make it to committee, they die in a committee, or they die on the floor, or whatever. It's brutal what happens to some of these bills sometimes. But we're going to be seeing a lot of different things going on. We're going to see drive-throughs attacked. I don't know if you knew this past or last year, they tried to get rid of our drive-throughs, and myself and 2 other guys in the industry went up to Santa Fe and were able to talk to some senators to kind of sway their mind to change them a little bit because, it doesn't make any sense to close cannabis drive-throughs when they haven't posed any risks or any known issues in New Mexico. It's all fear-mongering. And then, there's a lot of small businesses in New Mexico who have actually set up what they're called shacks. They're just little small buildings. They're drive-through only, and that's their business. Their whole business model is that little shack. Other producers have found that it's easier for them to put a little shack in front of their production facility and have people walk up, buy the product and walk off, that way. It's people have found creative ways to go about and make sales here in New Mexico, and we're kind of taking that away from them over just fears. Because right across the street from a dispensary here, not across the street, right next to a dispensary's drive-through here in Cruces is Walgreens, and they're slinging fentanyl through a window. So like, yeah, you can't tell me that doesn't scare people more than just cannabis going through a window. You know what I mean? Like, it's a little bit ridiculous. It's one of those double standard kind of things. Something we're going to be fighting.
Yeah, and you can also buy tall boys of alcohol, right? Well, you're from a drive-through, and you're like, it's not a good idea to drive with that,
Yeah, exactly. New Mexico, we I forgot you could still do that in Colorado. They got rid of that here in New Mexico in the 90s, and actually that's what why they're trying to do that here in New Mexico for cannabis, is because they got rid of it in the 90s. One of the senators, he always gives that story of, I lost a girlfriend in high school, unfortunately, to a drunk driver, blah blah blah. It's happened 40 years ago at this point. And he still gives that sob story with the cannabis thing. And I was like, dude, cannabis wasn't legal then. And even then, like, we're not seeing an uptick of like cannabis causing crashes or anything like that. Like, the only thing I saw was a kid got into a car wreck because he was street racing and he had used cannabis the day earlier. So like 6-7 hours earlier. And so it was in his system, obviously. And so he got a DUI because of it, because he admitted to using it the day before. And he was street racing, and there's even witnesses saying, yeah, he was street racing. That's why he wrecked. Like, we saw him lose control because he was going too fast. And so then the cannabis in the article got blamed. But it didn't really go anywhere with the media, because I think people saw, was like, well, obviously the kid was just being an idiot, because like, how are you high 6-7 hours later? Like, that's some crazy stuff. But that's going to be one of the things that's on there. That's going to be a fight. Another thing that I'm excited for, actually, is we're going to be doing something called, hopefully, picnic licensing. We're going to allow like cannabis events, like consumption at events and sales. That's something that we're pushing for. I don't know if it'll go through. I think we have the backing of the CCD to do it. And so that kind of helps. But I hope that really does happen, because New Mexico is such an open state. Our down here in Cruces, our winter average is 55. And so, we can do outdoor events all the time, like you can do it almost all year. And so it just makes sense. It's open space. The fairgrounds here in Cruces is out of town, like out of the city, so there's really no worries on that. And that's how it is a lot of places in New Mexico. So we kind of seen that, we need some place to do this. Like, we go to the carnivals, we go to the fairs and all this, and there's alcohol everywhere. There's people vaping, and no one cares. So that's something that we're going to try to change to. In California, luckily, they changed it last year too. And so that's going to be something we're going to try to probably reference itself. Is Colorado working on anything similar? Have they done anything like that?
And we're working on it, but it's, social use has been a real challenge to figure out, right? A lot of it's like smoking bans. Does that apply to cannabis? Insurance issues. But, so I salute you guys. Well, we do have, we do have laws that allow for social use consumption venues, but then it's up to municipalities or cities to decide whether they want them or not. Most don't. But I can tell you this: we're working with our law firm's working with a very, very big name in the concert industry nationally, like a venue, and they're looking at all their facilities opening up to cannabis. So it's like, it's just on its way, but it'd be wonderful if New Mexico could get a head start there and become a destination, right? I'd love to come to an event in Las Cruces and, hear a band and consume cannabis at the park and, just enjoy that.
Yeah, wake up the next day without feeling like crap.
There you go.
I think we all should deserve that. Yeah, because, we have consumption lounges here in New Mexico too. And, that's something that, has really opened the doors to us. And there's one here in Cruces I really like. They've done it different than a lot of other ones I've been to, because some of them would make you buy product before going into back to the consumption lounge, which to me, I was like, well, it's like a cannabis bar. Why can't I just walk in and then buy with the bud tender there? Like, why am I burdening this bud tender to go see that bud tender? So they just let you walk in, of course they check your ID and, do you want to buy here? Do you want to buy in the lounge? I'll buy in the lounge. You go in the lounge, you hang out. You're not forced to buy anything. They have food options. They have, water, soda, of course, cannabis drinks. They have, $5, 2 for $5 dabs, I think at happy hour. Then you can choose a bong, you can choose a dab piece, whatever you want to do. It's a good time, and it's real chill. They're going to start doing more events. And so the only problem with that is we did allow the local jurisdictions to decide if they want those or not. We didn't do that with retail, so they can't ban retails in New Mexico, but for some reason we allowed it with consumption lounges. And I'm like, well, we shouldn't allow that in consumption lounges, then it doesn't make any sense. And we do it with drive-throughs too. So I'm like, well, why are we just allowing just retails to have this special little thing, but everything else around it isn't? So I'm thinking that's something that maybe needs to get cleaned up and added to it, just so we can get more consumption lounges, so that way we can kill the stigma more. Because I'm from one of the most conservative cities in New Mexico, with Otero County, just an hour away from here. And I would guarantee you they would have voted no for retail spaces being there. But that's been a very lucrative business for a lot of locals over there. Actually, my cousin works for Munchies, and they've been a really great employer for him. And he wouldn't have had that without the cannabis industry being there. Like the only thing really there for you is the hospital or the military installation. That's like really only two options for employment over there. So it really opened it up for more people. So that's great to see. And then, of course, one of the most controversial ones that I'll bring up is there's a talk about pausing or closing licenses here in New Mexico due to people are fearful of an oversaturated market. Now, there's controversy over that because there's people in New Mexico who obviously feel that way, but I feel there's more who feel the other way, that they want it open. Especially due to my data that I've been getting through the town halls, that it doesn't seem to be anybody's priority. What the priority seems to be is they want more enforcement. Because if we just close licenses and we don't fix our enforcement issues that we're having, we're just putting a Band-Aid on an affected wound, and then we got to cut off our arm. When we could have just cleaned the wound or got something to help it, or did something to fix the wound before putting the Band-Aid on. And I kind of feel that isn't doing anybody any service. And we already have something set in place in our CRA for this exact thing. It's just the Cannabis Control Division hasn't done it yet. And I don't know why. And it says it clear as day in there that they're supposed to meet every year to rebalance the plant count, but it's been at 20,000 plants since 2022 when we went open. So I don't know if that's something that the legislature needs to talk to the CCD about or something, or maybe ask them, well, have you tried other methods? Because we already have something set in place. Why are we trying to recreate something else to take that place? And they did this so that way we wouldn't have to go this route. So that's something that we might see. And the reason why we might see is because there's a lot of big cannabis MSOs and everything that are pushing for that. Most of the local mom and pops, they want an open and fair free market. And to me, it really just stifles the young entrepreneurs, really. Like the kid that's 20 right now that can't get into the industry. He wants to be an entrepreneur. He doesn't get that opportunity, unfortunately. And my question is too, does this also apply to the consumption lounges? Are we just going to see a ban on consumption lounges too? Then that kind of worries me, because that has opened up access for people who can't smoke at home. We have a lot of Indian reservation or Native reservations here. We have a lot of military installations here. Yeah, the military members can't use, but their spouses do. I know this firsthand. And so there's a huge demographic that we're forgetting about, and that we kind of try to bring in. And those are the kind of things that are on the chopping block so far. And these are kind of just some popular ones, but there's going to be a lot. We're probably going to see a lot of cannabis bills in the legislature this year. How's Colorado going to look this year?
Yeah, I mean, there'll be action here too. I don't think there'll be quite as much as going on in New Mexico, but it's very exciting, all the stuff you have moving and shaking down there. I'd also be curious if any of the border issues get taken up down there. I've had a number of clients, and then just colleagues get pulled over while shipping, driving around with state legal cannabis in New Mexico by the federal, border patrol. And I've never seen anything like that, at any other border issue, any other borders in the United States, right? We don't deal with that in California, the southern border. We don't deal with it, in Minnesota, right? With the Canadian border. So it's sort of like, it really feels like New Mexico is being picked on. Mm-hmm. And I know your governor's been pretty vocal on this, but, I don't know if the Trump administration can get involved. I just don't know exactly the path. I believe there's a lawsuit going on, but that could be something that's addressed at the Capitol too. Is like, how do we make sure that our, state legal businesses aren't harassed by federal enforcement agents? Yeah,
and unfortunately, Mayorkas, or the secretary of DHS, hasn't been help either. I think you've heard the audio or seen the articles with his conversation with the governor, pretty much telling him, oh well, they make a lot of money, and they're pretty much just giving us the FU. And I've been dealing with these border checks my whole life, and I've hated them my whole life. They've done more harm to the local citizens than good. And a lot of the times, we just hate them, because like the other day I went through to go see my parents. It took me 15 minutes to get through the border check because it was backed up for I have no clue what reason. And And New Mexico Department of Transportation is actually supposed to ensure that that's not happening, because if it backs up enough, it gets into the highway where it's 75 miles an hour, and that's actually dangerous. And it becomes they're blocking the highway essentially, when they're supposed to be getting us through as fast as possible. So we're already seeing some games being played at the borders. I got a picture the other day. It happened at one of the other borders near, because I'm sure here in Cruces, no matter what direction you go, you're hitting one. And we're the only borderplex in the nation. Come to find out too. So I think that's one of the reasons why, is the fact that we're a borderplex, and Highway 54 is one of the most trafficked highways in the whole nation, just for the sole fact that it goes up from El Paso to Alamogordo, then it goes to Carrizosa, and that's actually the vein that people use to get to Colorado. And you can go to Oklahoma, then eastern New Mexico, or eastern Texas, or western Texas, and then you can get to the rest of the other nation from there. So it's one of the most highly trafficked areas, and so I think that's one of the reasons why they're trying to really crack down on it. And one of my friends, she actually went through the border today. She went to Mexico. That's where she's from. And they were actually asking her if she's seen any of these people. And they were like, the America's Most Wanted. I gave it to her at the border. Yeah. So there's some weird stuff going on. There's weird stuff going on in the area, dude. And it's I don't see it getting any better when it comes to this border issue. Because I don't know who's going to be coming in to replace anybody or who's staying. What we could do is we could have a memorandum of understanding with the Border Patrol. We did have one at one time, but not anymore. It just takes our government and them to get together, but obviously they don't want to talk to us about it and come together, and try to work something out. They just want to tell us, well, it's federally illegal, it's federally illegal. But, like you said, these other states, California and Arizona, they're not dealing with this at all. I was stationed in Sierra Vista, which is, right there by the border too. And the Border Patrol wasn't as bad there as they are over here. It was just crazy, because there was times where we'd be training and then an illegal would run through our training area, and we were instructed to leave them alone. That's not our job. And you just see a Border Patrol car chasing after them. You're like, this is wild, dude. Yeah. So, and growing up here, I didn't really see that. So I was like, that's wild. Or maybe it's just as bad, but I have no clue why they're not cracking down as much on that. And there's nothing we can really do legislatively to really address that, other than have DOT to be more strict. And that's not even something we do to the law. It's just telling them, hey, if they're not following the state, road laws, shut down the border check, because they're not following the law. They rent the land from us. So that's really our only thing. But then we start getting in a piss and match with the federal government. And, we don't really want to do that as a very poor, small state.
Yeah, I get it.
So, yeah, we'll see. I have no clue, but, we'll see what happens with, the legislative session here. As some of you guys know, I've told you, please show up this year if you guys can. It's going to be random. I'll let you guys know through my socials when that time will be. As you guys know, last year I was just hanging out, and then one day I get a call because something was getting into committee the next day, so I had to go to Santa Fe. So it's going to be a simper gummy kind of situation. Stay flexible. And those of you that live in Albuquerque, you're only an hour away. You guys have the most population, so there should be no excuse why you guys don't show up to the legislature this year. I'm 4 hours away. It takes me a lot longer to get up there than it is for you guys. And there's a lot more of you up there that you could make a difference. So if you could go up there, also contact your legislators this year, give them a call, send an email. And also Las Cruces Day is going to be coming up here soon too. So those of you down south here in Las Cruces, if you want to go to Santa Fe, the 1st or the 3rd, they're going to have Las Cruces Day up there. It's a whole week about the South and everything. We're forgotten about, but at least we have that week. It's a great time to meet your representatives. It's a great time to go to the Capitol and see how everything goes. We're the only round Capitol in the whole nation, so that's something cool. We used to allow open carry, but some people ruined that, so that's not allowed anymore. So that was one of the only things that kept us apart from other people, is it being round and open carry. So now it's just round.
That's wild, man.
Yeah. So what are some things that else are going on with Colorado, legislatively? You guys working on anything big, or?
So, the kind of two fights we'll have this year is, one is we have a group of prohibitionists that are attempting to limit the THC levels in cannabis products, mainly concentrates.
Yeah.
70% is kind of the number they're bandying around, or maybe lower. So, we'll be fighting against that. We think cannabis should be treated like alcohol, and there's not a proof limit there. It's more just up to the consumer what they want to buy. If they're 21 and older, I think that's fine. So that's a big one. The other kind of issue, which, will be a little controversial, is what to do with intoxicating hemp. Colorado has very, very limited intoxicating hemp regulations, and Like basically all they allow is really low dose. I think it's 1.25 milligrams cannabis drinks and to be sold. And so, there's a lot of people, including me, that think that you should have maybe 10 milligram drinks. They should be sold in bars and things like that. That doesn't mean that dispensaries don't have all their own products. That's where flower and everything else should be sold, as dispensaries, as far as I'm concerned. But, I do think there's a channel for intoxicating hemp products, largely drinks or maybe gummies, to be sold in, convenience stores, bars, restaurants, social use venues. But as you can imagine, a lot of cannabis store owners are really against that, and so we're trying to say, hey, you can have the vast majority of the market, but this is a segment, where we think that bars and restaurants should be able to sell, cannabis drinks the same way they sell a glass of wine. So that'll be a battle, man, and we'll see which way it goes. But I think over time, it'll probably head towards more access as opposed to less.
Yeah, and I'm more of a fan of, let's regulate this versus ban it, because, we're just taking a step backwards by banning things, because we work so hard to get where we are. Why are we trying to push back just because people are fearful of losing their business? The same thing with the license closure. A lot of people that are wanting it are just fearful of losing their business, which is fair, but this is capitalism. This is competition. May the best business win. We don't, why try to rig the system or rig the game? Why beat them when you can join them, kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, right? And for years, some of the big multi-state operators, really tried to crush hemp, right? And then now we've seen the last couple of years, they're all joining them. Now they're all making hemp.
Exactly.
It's like, that's kind of my philosophy. It's sort of, if you can't beat them, join them. And if you want to make an intoxicating hemp product over here and sell it in bars, but you also want to keep a bunch of products in your dispensary, you should have the right to do so.
Yeah, at least one's federally legal. You don't have to pay $280.
There you go.
There's one. And I was going to say also, New Mexico actually had a cap on our THC extracts for about 5 years. Didn't go very well, and they actually ended up changing it because it made no sense. So if you need some language on something like that, get with me and I'll get it to you and all that, because we fought that pretty hard for years. It went from 60%, then it went to 70%. And then finally they got rid of it because it made no sense. What ended up happening is we ended up with contaminated like vapes and extracts, because you would have a product that was like 80%, then they would have to dilute it. They would have to cut it with something, and that causes contamination and, just an all around terrible product for people to use, because people, when they cut things with things, they're not usually using things that are good for you. Yeah. So if you need something on that, let me know, because, we went through that before. And I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't be capping THC percentages. The percentage is already kind of going down already, because we're starting to figure out that THC is just a sales gimmick, like the high THC thing. There's more to cannabis than just the THC. You have the terpenes, you have the sulfurs that we're finding out, like Tropicana sulfur and all that, and the scatoli and all these other compounds that you within cannabis. And of course, the CBG, CBN, I love those two of my favorite other ones. I love them. We're just finding out what really goes into this plant. So yeah, once we get away from this THC thing, I think cannabis will be a lot better, and we'll stop seeing this whole fear of THC, this whole high THC psychosis thing, because we're going to see those numbers come down, and once testing gets a little more accurate too, stop seeing these fudge numbers. So,
True.
Yeah, but thank you for the update on that. That's really great that you bring those up, because those are really great topics and everything. Because I've seen a couple of states talk about a THC cap, and of course even here in New Mexico we're talking about a Delta 8 ban, HHC Delta 10 ban. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a big fan of how the way that those are made, because naturally they're in the plant, but they're such small, minute quantities that it doesn't really make sense to extract it. But the way that they make the Delta 8 products, not a big fan, but I'm also a firm believer, if you want to put that in your body, by all means. But it just needs to be regulated and ensure that it's was done in a safe manner. And we still don't know what those products do through the way that they're made. The THC-8 thing, that's something totally different. I feel it's free game, like why not? So we'll see what happens. What'll be in that bill and everything, but I'm with you on that. Why ban when we can just regulate it a little bit better and allow both to coincide, because it's the same damn plant at the end of the day.
It's literally the same plant. That's the funny thing.
Trying to regulate it through
whole plant regulation. We'll get there someday.
Yeah, we will. But anyway, we're going to move on to the very last topic we have. I know it's been a long episode, everybody. Usually these go about an hour, and thank you again for joining me. But we're going to be talking about the DEA judge cancels the cannabis rescheduling. And I know most of us have been paying attention to that. Brian, I'm sure you've been paying attention to that heavily. I mean, What's your involvement in it too as well? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we were one of the 15 litigants. We are one of the groups that is fighting to move cannabis to Schedule 3. Our client is Veterans Initiative 22, and that's a nonprofit.
Okay.
Basically, 22 vets kill themselves every day, and so this is a nonprofit that sprung around that. So very sympathetic client. And we're playing kind of an advisory role with them. They have other attorneys as well, but so we were pretty excited for these hearings to begin, and then we're somewhat dismayed yesterday when the judge decided to postpone the hearings on whether to reschedule or not somewhat indefinitely. Basically, some of the attorneys, not us but some other attorneys, filed a motion saying, hey, we think the DEA is cheating and we want time to investigate this. And the judge said, are you sure? Because that's going to delay this maybe forever. And they said yes. And so now then the judge granted that. So now I'm hopeful that we'll see our day in court to try to push to Schedule 3 later this year. But it's sort of, it's really thrown a curveball at this whole issue. And I should say Schedule 3 is not my perfect choice. I really think cannabis should be descheduled, but I do think it's a massive step forward if we could get it done.
Yeah. I agree. It is a huge step forward. We will end up with essentially 3 different industries, but right now we already have 2, which is already confusing. But it is a good step in the right direction because eventually, we will get to where we need to be, and hopefully we can consolidate everything at that point, so we can stop having this infighting between hemp and regular cannabis, because it's getting a little ridiculous now. The way that people are fighting about it. Like, guys, like we just said, it's the same plant. But I'm glad that there's people like you who are willing to fight on that federal level, and everything that can and will, because I've been watching it. I've been updating everybody, that watches my show on this. So I'm glad that someone that's directly involved is here that can, pretty much tell us what's going on and answer all these questions and everything. Because we have been noticing that, this doesn't seem like it's fair. And, I made a public comment on there. I debated, requesting to see it, but then I saw people were getting, discriminated against, especially the veterans group. And that pissed me off personally. Because, like I'm a veteran myself and I love my vets. And, when you start screwing us over, that says a lot about you, because of all of our sacrifices that we put for this country, and you don't want to listen to us. So, it's great that you guys are willing to fight. And you know what? I'd rather it get to where it's at now versus them cheating and it being seen as something harmful for who knows how much longer. This may extend the timeline, but the timeline we were on before was never going to happen. So, at least we're on some kind of timeline now. But, we just know it's going to take some time. And I thank you guys so much. I mean, is there any kind of updates that you want to give everybody about this so far?
Well, I mean, it's definitely the biggest thing to happen with cannabis at the federal level in 50 years, right? Yeah. So it's a giant deal. And, the Biden administration kind of threw us a bone and said, we'll give you a hearing. Now that hearing's been postponed, right? And so it's really kind of like, will we have a new head of the DEA? Like Trump will probably appoint someone soon to take over from Ann Milgram, the current head of the DEA. Will that person be pro-cannabis, right? Yeah. Hopefully, but who knows? But they will play a big role in this scheduling hearing when and if it happens, right? And then there's, a lot of, enthusiasm or mixed feelings about the incoming administration. Will Trump make this a priority? Some people have been on the record saying absolutely yes, Curaleaf and other big MSOs, and some people are very concerned about whether this is a priority for him and his administration at all. So, it's just a bunch of curveballs these days. But I guess the good thing is we are having a conversation at the federal level, and for years they kind of blocked us out and said cannabis bad, don't talk to us. And now we're in the rooms and trying to get in front of the judges and all that stuff. So hopefully this year we see some resolution and we see some fix on banking, and perhaps we ran a rescheduling hearing. I think that's about what we can hope for. I don't think we're going to see legalization. But those would be giant steps forward for my clients and for all the business owners out there.
Yeah, I agree, because this is huge. This is the biggest step that we've had so far. With a legalization push, and it's just going to take time. Like these things do. It's not going to happen overnight. But we'll see what happens with the Trump appointee. The first guy that he appointed, he dropped out. He was pro cannabis, but I guess there were some concerns there, and I've talked about it on the show before, guys, on last season. But we'll see who gets appointed. I'm not too confident that we'll get a lot done either. Hopefully we can get the banking in, and get some relief to the cannabis industry, because this 280E is really killing people, especially the banking thing. Here in New Mexico, we try to mitigate that or try to lessen that blow a little bit. We do have banking here in New Mexico. Certain banks are working with industry people, but it's really expensive. You are paying a hefty penny monthly. Sometimes it's $500 to $5,000 a month just for an account. So yeah, it's a little too pricey on top of paying the 280E and all the other stuff that comes with it and regular things. So it's a struggle. So I hope something happens, and thank you again for keeping up the fight on the national level for us, because we need people like yourself to keep it going, because I can only do so much on my local side.
No, we're all in it together, man, and the local stuff matters more than anything, honestly. So I appreciate your advocacy.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. Well, that's all I have, and I wasn't expecting you to know so much about the DEA thing, but I'm so glad, because we got a direct, of what's going on and what's going to happen soon and what we could be looking forward to. So I really appreciate that. And, I really look forward to having you on again, to be honest, next year, or maybe later on this season, if you have time. I usually open it again for the second part of the season. Maybe something cool will happen, and, I really want to get you on so we can talk about it. So I look forward to it, man. And, maybe I'll see you again here in the area or something like that. If you are, hit me up. We'll spark one up.
Will do, my friend. Thank you, Chad. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning in for the first episode of season 3. We'll be back again with another episode. This was Ask Chad Grassy Logic. Make sure you like, subscribe, whatever you got to do to stay in the know. Legislative session's coming up. All right, guys. Shoots.